on Miss Lexi today. And with Lexi, I wanted to show, we've been working on, and I show a lot how I use small circles to stabilize the pelvis, which is basically how you get hindquarter engagement. It has to start with lateral stability as well as enough placement of the hind legs underneath the torso in the resistant phase of the stride to control their forward propulsion. So propulsion is called pushing, and the control over propulsion is called braking. So with every stride, when the hind leg comes forward and hits the ground, that begins the braking phase. And as it goes through peak vertical behind, that begins the pushing phase. And so working with level and straight on a circle helps with the hind leg placement deeper under the torso, because they slow down on circles, so you reduce the pushing force, which gives the horse a chance to equalize that with the braking force. And it's not just the phase of the leg strides, it really is the extension and flexion through the hip joint, which relies on pelvic stability, and there's a propulsive or locomotory use of the back muscles, as well as a stabilizing use of the back muscles. So in order to engage the hindquarter and lift the back, that whole mechanism that involves back muscles, pelvic use, and placement of the hind legs forward and back, all of that needs to be equalized, right? So slow and equal is better than fast and on the forehand. And if I do, like all I'm doing to start off with is asking her to be straight, and I have a nice marked out circle from doing the long reins with Rafalco and Prima. I have a big circle and a little circle. So I'm just sort of keeping her in the center of this bigger circle track and letting her choose her speed, right? And you can see she always starts off very disengaged, very unstable. This is difficult for her. So once I have a little bit of her staying forward, yes, on the circle, you can see she's a bit wobbly, right? Now I have an app on my phone called the Metro Timer, and it's just a metronome. So a nice competitive, energetic, powerful walk might be between 85 and 90 beats per minute, right? She's a long way from that. So to just create stability, balance, and rhythm, which is the main ingredient for impulsion, so I either get too much stopping or too much going. So when I turn on the metronome, I'm hoping you can hear it on my microphone. It's just little beeps. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to the beeps, and I'm going to balance her between the forward and the resistance to forward to try to get the hind legs stepping in time with the beeps of the metronome. And we all need an outside source. Music is very good, very rhythmic music, or a metronome. So you can see sometimes she's behind the beeps, sometimes she's ahead. So the timing of my leg aid, my tap with the whip, the use of my core and back, I'm just trying to guide her, right, into a steady tempo. So I don't know what stride length she will need, but I do know she needs to be stable through the hindquarter and the pelvis, and the back. And the legs have to stride equally between the left and right, and they have to be equal between the forward phase of the swing and the backwards phase of the swing. That's what it takes to be in tempo. This is why rhythm is such an important part of training and is often part of the judging criteria in dressage, because rhythm, to me, is the main indicator of true impulsion. And by propulsion, I mean equal parts self-propelled. Right now she's not self-propelled, right? And equal parts self-controlled. So the neck shortening, trying to stay on our path, the neck curling. So I'm feeling each stride of the hind leg. I'm listening to the metronome, and we're aiming for, it's a very slow rhythm, but when I work her on the smaller circle, especially I think the last video I showed some of the targeted work we were doing with the right hind leg. And this may even be a bit quick for her. So I'm going to drop the beats per minute down to 60. And we're going to see if we can at least start with 60. So before I can get 80 beats per minute, which would be quite a powerful balanced walk, or 90, we just need to be in a specific tempo. Yeah, that feels a little easier for her to achieve. I can get a little closer to the beeps much sooner. Yeah, that's a little more the speed at which she can stabilize. And that's where I want to start. I have no judgment whether it's a slow tempo and short strides, or a fast tempo or long strides. It's the precision of the tempo that is related to balance. It's that precision of rhythm with a straight neck, with a level back, that starts to develop or combine two aspects of balance, the internal straightness with impulsion. And it's quite hard for her to equalize the use, and it's quite hard for her to stay precisely in the tempo. Just there we nail it. There she gets a little quicker. There, a little slower. And so with the metronome, what we suddenly realize is the beautiful rhythm that we thought we had is actually not very precise. And what balance is just like optimal balance is just a refinement of balance. It's getting more and more specific. And at the highest level, the musical freestyle is supposed to basically show that in the walk, trot, and canter, the horse can carry a very steady rhythm while doing maneuvers, changing directions, making transitions on different paths of travel. And what's difficult about switching between walk, trot, and canter is because you have a different footfall pattern. In the walk, you're going from 4 beats, in the trot to 2 beats, and in the canter, 3 beats. So when I turn on the metronome, I just focus on the hind legs, which is almost always you can work on in 2 beats for walk and trot. The canter, I try to pick up the tempo of the leading leg. So it's really just 1 beat, because the 3 beats can sound pretty fast and be really hard to match. The simpler you keep it, the easier it is. So I just like to feel the hind legs moving in time to the beeps that I'm listening to. And she's starting to get better at it. And as she's getting better at it, right, in order to match those beeps, left and right hind leg have to work equally, and she can't get too fast or too slow. So if she tries to avoid engagement by just going slower and losing energy, she'll get behind the timing of the beeps, right? So forwardness has nothing to do with miles per hour. Forwardness has to do with the power of propulsion, right? Or the steadiness of propulsion. So in her case, going faster makes her disengaged. It makes her unstable. And if she takes too If she gets too fast and she's on her forehand, she appears as if she's tracking up. That's what she was rewarded for. But it's really because the hind legs, not that the hind legs are coming forward, she tracks up because the front legs are not getting off the ground because they're overloaded, right? So just to get steadiness, you can see how difficult this is for her. But I'm just going to play with the beeps. I have a nice visual path of travel so I can kind of maintain the straightness while I keep most of my focus on the beeps. And because she overcurls her neck, I can use the reins left to right, but I've already built her balance up to the point that if I tighten my core or back, that's enough to slow her down without rein pressure. Because if I had to use a lot of rein pressure to keep her at this slow tempo, then I would probably speed up the tempo and just try to find a match. Right? So some horses might have a much natural, quicker tempo, and in her case, it's a very slow tempo. And usually if they've been engaged for some time, like her and like Rafalco, in order to stabilize the pelvis, the strides have to be very slow, very small, in order to equalize. Once they're equal and you build the muscle support, that's where the power and the length comes from. But if you sort of shoot for power and length before you have control and balance, then you wind up with a disengaged pelvis, a dropped back, weight on the forehand, and a whole lot of contorting through the neck. That's getting a little easier for her. And I forgot to check my time. I'm going to try not to go too long. And also, because she's ready to do more and more work with trot, I put out the metronome is part of her training program, because as the walk gets into this steady tempo, and she's straight and she's level, that's what makes a good trot. And then as soon as she trots, I expect she will lose her balance. And so in between each trot transition, I use a metronome to help me really steady the walk, put the horse back in balance, and prepare for the next trot transition. And that's how I end up really improving the trot. And before I can even work with the metronome, I work with the small circles, making sure that we have enough stability that I can start to balance the braking and the pushing. So she's had a long time of being able to choose her own speed, and this is a little bit of an advancement as we get ready for trot work. Yeah, even 60 beats per minute is when she's stable and she's not falling forward. It even feels like she wants to go slower than that. I'm having to really push with the leg and use the whip quite a bit to keep the hind legs from just going too slow. So a lot of horses do this. When we ask them to slow down and start stabilizing the hindquarters and the back, what they do is they take their foot off the gas pedal in order to slow down. And that's not true braking. So braking is just like the brakes in our car. Braking, and it's spelled the same way, B-R-A-K-E. And it's a technical term that means resistance to the current acceleration. So whether you're going 55 miles an hour or 5 miles an hour, your brakes in your car resist the acceleration actively. That means she's using muscle, she's using effort to resist the speed, as well as the very same use of her body is how she resists her own body weight from overloading her own front legs. So if it's difficult to keep a tempo, I don't have any brakes. And so when she goes slow by just reducing the pushing. So if I just go slow by reducing the pushing, I never build power, right? I need the push, but I also need equal resistance to push. And that's what creates rhythm. That's what creates a very stable and very precise tempo. So I'll just give her about 5 more minutes. You can see my aids have to be a whole lot quicker. My timing is quicker, but I'm not holding her here. My legs and whip are not on constantly, and my reins are not holding her back, right? So the timing between my contacts and aids is more rapid because of the precision of the beeps, right? So the beeps guide me, and then I guide her. And it was pretty humbling the first time I actually used a metronome. I thought I had rhythm with some of my horses, and